Oi, 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 YouTube, it's good to see you guys. I just recorded this video. I'm recording it a second time because I rambled a little bit. But I wanted to talk about Trickster and his update, what I think of him, and what I think needs to happen to him in the future. But first, I want to address what I think his playstyle is and what I think people have suggested that we do to him that I don't necessarily agree with. So, first off, I think, you know, I've played console Trickster and PC Trickster, and I think Trickster's intended playstyle is unlike Huntress, who can hit those 6 snipes, you know, from a good distance. Trickster's not like that. Trickster is close to medium range at best, you know. If they're more than like 6-7 meters in front of you, the knives maybe aren't the best idea. The reason I say this is because when you M1 somebody, right, a lot of people say, well, if you're close enough, just M1. If you M1 somebody, there's 3 seconds where you don't move, right? You're doing your animation, unless you have saved the best for last, but we're talking base kit, right? There's 3 seconds where you're just not moving. That allows survivors who took the injury to get a huge sprint burst, move forward, make even more distance, right? In theory, with the knives, if you catch a survivor and you get very close to them, almost like Plague, you body block them from the window, whatever, you get some knives in them, they take the sprint boost, but you're moving anywhere from 97 to 92% movement speed because of the knives. You immediately switch to your M1, you're moving 110% movement speed within a second, instead of 3 seconds of no movement whatsoever. So you can make, or they make less distance, and you keep your distance to the survivor a lot better if you use knives first. So I think that's kind of the idea, is get close and sort of just machine gun the survivors. The problem is if you run up on multiple survivors, it takes too many knives to fully lacerate them. So you have to M1 multiple, which at that point, they're mostly running, right? You take 3 seconds 3 times and they've all dispersed, right? So there's no like inherent sort of pressure, right? With Huntress, you could hatchet one person and then hatchet another person and then maybe commit to the second. And with Plague, you could vomit on 3 people and then commit to the last one. Eventually they'll get broken or they cleanse, and that buffs you up a little bit, you know? Trickster doesn't have that. And with all the speed he has in the world, I don't think that pressure is something he is good at. People talk about map pressure, and I think map pressure is not something that killers have. I think that it is something that you as a killer generate. Certainly, killers with more speed can generate it better. But, right, if you as a killer, whether, you know, like if you're playing Pyramid Head has virtually 0 map pressure. He is a killer that walks and has to find and engage in a chase. It's the same with Wraith. It's the same with Clown. A lot of killers are that way. They don't have like map pressure. But killers that move very quickly are considered to have map pressure because people have to run early. They have to, you know, get away. And they're a little bit more skittish to these things. If Freddy teleports, Spirit, Nurse, things like that. So I don't think him having no map pressure is a huge deal, because Pyramid Head and all these other killers do fairly well without, like, you know, map pressure. I think they can generate it by 3-genning and things of that nature. But when it comes to Trickster, he has to commit to a person, and that's a huge problem. He can't split his attention super well. He can't really hit multiple people very well without paying a huge penalty. Right now, if I were to roll up on 3 survivors and put 4 knives in 2 different survivors, eventually they would decay to 0 unless I commit to one of them. So my proposed change is to make it so that right now it's 8 knives to fully lacerate someone. And this proposed change keeps that number at 8. And if you use the USB, it would be, you know, 7 or whatever. So the idea is, if 8 is 100%, 4 knives is 50%. So the idea here is if you hit 3 knives, right, less than 50%, then it would decay to 0. The idea is that you have to commit a little bit to somebody to be able to get the benefit here. But if you hit over 50%, so if you hit 4, 5, 6 knives, then it decays to 50%. So just putting a hard stop at 50% if you meet the threshold. The idea here is if I run up on 3 survivors, 2 survivors even, and I put 4 knives in you, and then I commit to the other person and, you know, fully lacerate them and then chase them, the person I put 4 knives into still has 4 knives in them. That means the next time I see them, I don't get to like insta one-shot them with a knife and you know, fully lacerate them, but that means that I have a little bit of an easier time. If they early run to Shack, or if they early run to Jungle Gym or Longwall Jungle Gym, I could conceivably get 4 knives in as they hit a vault or something like that, right? And that gives him so much more strength, because a large Trickster issue is at Long Wall, Jungle Gym, and Shack, you're SOL. There's not a ton you're going to be able to do, right? Mind games, yes, yeah, you can mind game, but if the survivors are smart and they're patient and they call you out on the mind games, your knives are not effective. In a lot of cases, it's better to just leave. And if you have like 5 knives in somebody and your chase is taking 30 seconds, 45 seconds at Shack, and there's not quite an end in sight, and you decide to leave, you get punished for that, which, that's tough. It's a tough punishment. And I think that punishment could be lessened by just making that decay go down to 50%. That's it. I don't like the idea necessarily of 99ing it, right? With Ghostface, you can 99 this stock, but Ghostface is still M1, so he still has to get like fairly close to you. He has to mind game pallets. He has to play LT walls, right? It's a little different, but if you 99 the laceration meter, and then, it had no decay, I think that's a little bit strong. So I think this is a middle ground. The 50% is a decent thing so that skilled players can set up and, I'm going to hit you and I'm going to hit you and then I'll come back for you later. They can set up for the late game earlier and not have to stress so much about like, well, there goes 25 seconds of a chase and I have to reload my knives and I have nothing to show for it, because that's hugely punishing and hugely frustrating. Now, people have mentioned, what about mending? What if you make them mend? I still don't think that solves the problem of, like you still have to commit and hit 8 freaking knives, which is difficult at a lot of tiles. And then once you hit 8 knives, if you walk away, well, then they mend and then they heal. And then, so it does slow them down a bit, but it's not inherently pressure. And I'll say that, like, I don't think mending is a fun thing as a survivor to do. Playing against Slinger and Legion and having to mend is like, it's very irritating. I think mending is really boring. I don't think it's fun from a survivor gameplay perspective. I don't know anyone that's like super excited to mend. No skill checks, but just standing there for the sake of standing there and like bandaging yourself is really, it's not great. So I don't like the idea of mending, and I don't like the idea of broken, because that's very similar to plague. Like it's almost the same as plague. And so I don't think we should be doing those types of things. I like that twins have incapacitated and they've added this new status effect, and maybe Trickster could do a new status effect, but why? Again, I think the problem is commitment to chases and having to fully commit to 8 knives and then 8 more knives, or 8 knives and an M1. And it would be nice if I can, fully lacerate someone, hit 8 knives, and as they're sprint boosting away, I can get 4 more knives in them and just come back later. And if somebody heals a health state, there's still 4 knives, so I could still drop them with 4 more. I think that, you have to hit the 50% threshold, or you decay to 0. I think that is the best change to give him long-term pressure to, because he's playable, obviously, but he's not incredibly strong. And if survivors run early and get to Shack, get to Jungle Gym, use these bigger tiles with great windows, he just struggles. Huntress can nail somebody at a window and injure them, and Plague can set people up and, vomit on them once, walk away, and they're going to get sick over time. There's just no long-standing implications of the meter existing. Using the knives right now is just committing to somebody, right? And there's a benefit in using the knives, but only at close range. And if they're injured, right, you could use the knives at medium range, but it's all so reliant on the tiles survivors run to. And if a survivor is smart and they use tiles very, very well, as I've experienced, they will put you kind of in the dirt. And they kind of force you to just M1. So I know a lot of people want him to be 115% movement speed. Again, I don't think that affects the commitment problem he has and the long-standing pressure problem he has. So I think that if we made it so that the laceration meter stops at 50%, and pressure survivors that way, that makes it better. Hitting 4 knives at a Jungle Gym or a Shack windows a lot easier to do than hitting 8. But I think I don't think we should just reduce the number to 4. The closer that the amount of knives required gets to 1, the closer we have to just having a Huntress, right? Because Huntress is just 1. And I think that I don't think we should just be reducing the amount of knives. Even with Yumi's USB, the Melodious Murder USB, I think that, we've seen it take 7. It doesn't change drastically. If you take it to 6 or 5, like, okay, it might change, but then at that point we're getting, just something that requires like kind of less skill, less thought, and is more similar to Huntress over time as time goes on. The closer that number gets to 1, which is a hatchet, right? It takes 1 hatchet to hit somebody, to injure them. The closer his knives get to 1, just the closer that we get to having a Plague Huntress hybrid that doesn't have like an identity. So I think making the laceration meter change and just giving it a hard stop at 50% decay if you get over that threshold is good. You know, he does have advantages over Plague, and he does have some advantages over Huntress in his speed and in, you know, the amount of keeping up he can do. But he lacks what both of them lack, and that's long-term pressure over time. Not necessarily map pressure, but just long-term pressure on survivors. All that being said, main event is still a huge problem as well. But if we fix this laceration meter issue, then we can better, maybe more accurately see what main event needs, and figure that out as well. But I think we have to change the fundamental laceration meter before we can really tweak main event, because main event could be OP if the laceration meter stays at, you know, 50%, and then we just make it so you can like activate main event whenever you want. You know, like, oh, just hold on to it, wait till somebody's got, you know, 4 knives in them, and then activate main event, and all you have to do is, you know, hit 4 and then boom, and then but it also, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't be OP, but I think to see what main event needs, we have to change the base kit just enough. So I'm glad the speed changes came out. I don't think that Trickster is strong enough yet, and these are my proposed changes, so be gentle. I'd love to hear what you guys think down in the comments below, and you know, I'll be praying to the entity to see you guys in the next video.